This is a video tutorial on how to do a zipper overlay pocket that I use all the time in my Maggie 55 patterns. First thing you're going to need is the pattern piece, which shows the placement of the zipper overlay, and you've already cut out the area on the paper pattern to trace onto either your lining or your exterior. You are going to need a 7-inch number 3 nylon zipper. You can also use a number 5 if you prefer, but I tend to use a number 3 because that's what I have. The measurement for these zippers are from the top stop through to the end stop. So that measurement is 7 inches. You'll also need your prepared zipper overlay. So this is leather, and I have already edge coated all the way around and on the interior, but you may be using vinyl, which is fine. You will also need the pattern piece that you have just cut out and traced the area for where the zipper overlay is to be placed on top once it's glued. You will also need the interior pocket piece, which is generally 9 inches across by 14 inches long. Both these pieces have been interfaced and ready to go. You will also need a pair of scissors and some glue. You also can use double-sided tape if you prefer. I don't like to have too big of a buildup on my pocket with the DST or the double-sided tape. But if you're using a vinyl, sometimes the glue does not hold well. So in that case, you may want to add a little bit of double-sided tape to that edge. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your pattern and your zipper overlay. You're going to place it right side down so that you're exposing the back side of the leather. I use fabric glue, and I have this tiny little, it used to be an oil container. It's got a very fine tip on it, so I find that that is a really good way to get a fine line on your zipper overlay. So what you do is you squeeze your glue just along the outside edge all the way around the zipper overlay. Now I'm placing it on top of the interior fabric just because I like to just flip it overwards. So I like to smooth out some of the glue so that it will adhere better. I always keep a damp cloth as well by my side to remove any excess glue off of my fingers. So what you want to do now is you want to flip this piece so that the wrong side of the zipper overlay is laying on top of the right side of the, in this case it's lining, the interior lining. You place it on the drawn in areas and you just give it a bit of a tap down to seal that. Now if you want, you can continue and go do another part of the bag and let that seal and bond together, and then we're going to do some stitching. But I'm going to let that seal for a few minutes and then we'll come back and do the stitching. Now that this zipper overlay has bonded with the lining piece, I can go ahead and stitch this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch completely around the zipper overlay, approximately 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the zipper overlay, coming completely around to where I started. Now when I begin, I usually begin down this corner, but you can begin anywhere you wish. You start stitching and do not back stitch. You completely encompass the zipper overlay, and then you end where your stitch began and you pull your top stitches to the back and tie them off so that it gives the appearance of a continuous line without back stitching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to do that stitching, and I'll come back and show you how to pull your thread from the front to the back. So you can now see the stitching that I have done on the zipper overlay. So I began right here, stitched completely around the overlay, and ended right at the same spot. Now you may want to take a few minutes while you're stitching to pull that front thread to the back before you complete that round of stitching, because if you go over top of the stitching with one stitch, you may shred the thread and have a harder time pulling it to the back side. So I've already pulled that thread to the back. This is the front thread on the ending stitch, so I'm going to show you how to pull that back. You want to flip this piece with the right side down, and then you want to find the stitch or the thread that actually is attached to the front, which I do believe right there. So what you want to do is grab a hold of that little loop that you see right there, and then pull that through to the back. You should have 4 threads to the back side. And now what you're going to do is you're going to tie a knot into those threads. So I just come around and I give, because I'm using nylon thread, I will tie quite a few knots. You can actually take a lighter and burn off the tips or the edges. I generally do that when I'm on the exterior, when I don't want to see, but I don't have a problem with that tail showing. I've trimmed off the excess, and now I'm going to go ahead, flip it back to the right side up, and I'm going to remove this area right in through here so that I can place my zipper in the back side. So I'm going to begin by just giving that a snip right there, and I'm going to cut all the way down underneath the zipper overlay. I'm going to bring it around this way again, because it's easier for me to cut from that side all the way down to this side. So what I've initially done is I have snipped through that lining piece. Now you want to go to the back side and you want to remove any excess lining, because you want to add your zipper. So I'm just going to start cutting around. You leave about 1/4 of an inch along the edge from the stitching. Now be very careful not to snip either your vinyl overlay or your leather overlay, and that can happen quite easily. So you want to make sure that your scissors are between those 2 layers as you're trimming back the excess lining all the way to the end. And it doesn't matter how clean the cut is, as long as you're exposing the wrong side of the zipper overlay so that you can place your zipper. Now what you need to do is get the zipper, and you are going to add a layer of glue to the top side, because there's your zipper pull, the top side and the bottom side along these edges. And again, it really does help to have a very fine tube or bottle that has your glue in it. This is an excellent bottle that I have because of the fine point. So now what you've done is you've added the glue to that zipper. You need to place this zipper, this interior piece on top of this zipper. So you grab that piece and you lay that down over top that zipper. You want to keep it centered. I usually zip it up, and you don't want to have your bottom stop or your top stops underneath where you're going to be stitching, because you could break your needle. So now that I've got that, bring this up a little bit, nice and centered, I'm going to just give that a bit of a press. Now you can leave this if you want to bond a bit and again continue with other stuff according to the pattern that you're going to be doing. But I'm just going to flip this over and I'm going to show you what the next step is. So this is what it's going to look like from the back side. Now what you want to do is you want to add more glue. I know I use a lot of glue, but it really does hold everything in place so that you can stitch it without getting puckering or getting any movement. I'm going to add a bit of glue to the bottom of that zipper right along the edge of the tape. So that's the only place. Now you can smooth this if you wish, it doesn't really matter, but if you get too much glue, you need to remove some of it so that it doesn't, you know, go out and over into an area that you don't want it to be. I'm going to take my pocket piece, which is my 9 by 14 inch piece, and I'm going to lay the 9-inch piece, which is right here, the right side of the 9-inch piece onto that glue. So it's kind of like a backwards way, but that's going to go that way, the pocket. So I'm going to just push this down a little bit, and I'm going to then draw it down so that you can see how this looks. So that's the bottom of your zipper, the wrong side. You've placed that down with the glue, and you can see that the extension of the pocket piece is up at the top. Now, a lot of times people are impatient and they really don't want to wait for that to set. So you can, if you are using the fabric, you can pin through to hold it in place and take it to the sewing machine. But if you are using vinyl or leather, you cannot pin through that because it will leave holes. Okay, so now that you see how that's done, you want to flip it with the right side up. So that's what it's going to look like. You have that piece attached, which you're exposing the right side, and you're also seeing the right side of your interior piece with the zipper overlay all ready to go. Now, what you want to do is you want to stitch. I'm going to get a pointer here. You're going to stitch basically from this point right here, which is about 1/8 of an inch past that line, that opening, and you're going to start here, and you're not going to back stitch. You're going to stitch all the way down on the lower edge of that from the zipper in the area of the zipper overlay, and you're going to stop approximately 1/8 of an inch past that opening. You are not going to back stitch on either end, and you're going to pull the threads from the front to the back and tie them off. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch that, and then I'll come back and we'll continue. So now you can see where I've done the stitching. I have not tied off my ends yet, but I've stitched from approximately 1/8 of an inch from this side all the way across to the other side on the lower edge. I've left the pins in because I want to keep it secure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this piece over, and I'm going to tie off those two areas. So you just give this back stitch a bit of a tug, and you can see that the front is coming back. You pull to the back side. I will generally just do a couple of knots, as I said before, to secure it, and then trim off the excess. You do the same on the other side. You give it a tug so that that front stitch comes back. You bring it to the back side, and you then tie that off as well. So I usually do about 3 or 4, and then you get rid of the excess. You can remove your pins if you wish at this point, and now what you're going to do is you're going to add a bead of glue just below that stitch line that you made. Now, one thing you need to be careful with is if you have a very thin fabric and you use too much glue, you can actually go through to the other side. So that's why I tend to use my finger just to smooth it out to help it so that it doesn't get gobby or come through to the facing of the lining. You need to bring this piece down, which is your interior pocket. You pull that down and give that a press with your finger. Now I also have an iron here, and I'm going to give this a bit of a press to hold it in place. The table I'm working on is a padded table, so I can press down using a hot iron to do that. So this is what you're seeing at this point. You are seeing the back side or the wrong side of the interior piece you're using. You've got the wrong side of the zipper, but you're seeing the right side of the pocket lining. Now what you want to do is you want to bring this bottom piece up top and seal it across the top for when we go and stitch the rest of the zipper overlay. Now a couple of things to bear in mind. If you're using a fabric that has a right or wrong side, and you don't want to open your pocket and see that this part is upside down, you may want to cut this piece in half and place this on top, and then when you stitch down your sides, you can stitch right across the bottom as well. So bear that in mind if you are using a one-way print as opposed to a solid like I have right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another bead of glue just above that zipper tape edge, kind of like on the area that's got the exposure of the wrong side of the zipper overlay. Smooth that a bit with my finger, and I'm going to bring this bottom piece, which is the 9-inch edge of the opposite side from here, up, and I'm going to cover completely the glued area right there. So it doesn't matter how high you go, but I have made my patterns so that they will not get caught in your lining down below when you sew, and there's not any excess above. So I just basically place that just enough to cover, as you can see, that glue. I give it a press down, and at this time I will take my iron and I will give this pocket a bit of a press so that it's got a nice clean edge, so that this doesn't pop back. And sometimes I will give it a press up on the top to help the glue dry a little. Again, you can use a pin as long as you're not going through your leather or your zipper overlay, but if you are too close down below, you do not want to pin that to hold it. So I'm going to get over here because that is too far down. So basically this is what it's going to look like. Now you want to flip it with the right side up so you can see, you don't see any of the pocket. Where you're going to begin, I'll use this pointer again, where you started across the bottom this way, that is the point you are going to start. You're going to go up till you're approximately 1/8 of an inch from this opening. You're going to turn and pivot and then continue all the way down with your stitch to approximately 1/8 past this opening again, pivoting, turning, and coming back down and ending where this stitch, this last stitch, began. You are not going to tie off either end, but you're going to pull the threads to the back side and tie off. The reason I do that is that there's no back stitching, it doesn't look bulky, and it looks like it's a continuous stitch line to the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and do that stitching and come back. So you can now see that I have stitched completely around the opening of the zipper area. So I have not back stitched, left my tail here, and I've left my tail here. So I've gone, again to recap, I have gone from that point that I started across, up, around the top, and back down again, approximately 1/8 of an inch from the opening where the zipper overlay is and the zipper is placed. Now I'm going to flip it to the wrong side. I'm going to tug on my thread to pull my thread from the front to the back, and again I'm going to tie it off a few times like so, snip off the excess. Do the same on the other end. Tie it off once, 3 times I generally do, and then snip off the excess. Now at this point you can remove your pins and get rid of them because they're not holding anything down anymore. Now you'll notice that this pocket has not been sealed up. And this is one of the things you make sure you do, because I have done this before where I've completed, got anxious, turned this around, went, okay, I'm going on to the next thing, and forgot that my pocket was not sealed. And I had to go back and take it apart and reseal it. So now what you want to do is you want to stitch down through the pocket lining. Now the best way to do that, I'm going to turn this wrong side up. So the best way to do that is to look at your front of your pattern, you bring this over to the side and you bring this section over to the side. Now I'll do a clip just to keep it out of the way, and I'm exposing the raw side of that pocket so that I can stitch it down and in place. If you clip it over to the side, that just keeps it out of the way for yourself. Now what you want to do is you want to get as close to that edge as possible and stitch all the way down through the pocket to seal off the side. If it helps you, you can actually draw a line that you can follow, but generally I just use at the start here, and that space or that distance between the needle and here I usually keep consistent throughout. So you're going to do this side and then you're going to do this side. So basically I'm going to go to the machine, I'm going to stitch that off, and then I will return. So now you can see that I've stitched the sides of the pocket so that I don't have any open areas. Basically I've gone from as close as possible to the zipper end all the way down, back stitched, and same on this side. So I'll remove these clips and show you. Basically this is what the piece will look like from the front, from the right side, and this is what it looks like from the wrong side. You can see that the stitch lines are there and they come up. Now if you happen to be a little bit off there, that's okay, nothing's going to come out of there. So basically that is how to do the zipper overlay on either the interior or exterior of all of my patterns. You open it up, you can see how nice and clean that pocket looks. There's no raw edges here and or here, and it's just perfect. It's very professional looking, and I'm sure that you will love to use it in all of your bags. So basically that's it. That's how to do the zipper overlay for any of my patterns in Maggie 55.